Welcome. This is Bleacher Blums, a sports podcast for baseball fans. Now here's Dave Tuttle and the Astros master of banter, Blummer.
Oh, hello, and welcome to the Bleachers. It is Bleacher Blums. I am your co-host, Jeff Blum. Played 14 years in the show, as seen behind me, and half the jerseys I wore. And then we've got David Tuttle out on the West Coast, covering that West Coast, having a good time. You got a little bit of a heat wave out there, Tuttle, but David Tuttle played minor league baseball for about 8-9 years, traded a couple times in some big trades. Unfortunately, didn't get a break to get into the show, but plenty of knowledge and experience on that side. Big-time CrossFit guy, played for Team USA. I don't know how I always forget that, but that's pretty, during that era that we grew up in, you playing on Team USA is saying something. There's some great names and a lot of big leaguers on the teams that you've played with. But here we are in the Bleachers. It's open, and it's been great hanging out with you and hanging around a lot of the friends. We gained some golf buddies, I think, along the way with that podcast we had a couple ago, talking about our major championship prowess and how good we are at prognosticating who's going to win a major championship. And then we had Roland Colton on, one of your basketball buddies who has written a book and has done a good job kind of tying history to the modern day game, which I thought was really interesting and a lot of fun. But what's on tap for this broad podcast this week, that's brought to you by St. Arnold, is going to be a little bit of a smorgasbord. It's
Smorgasbord, that's an easy one to say.
Smorgasbord. I always feel like I should be the Swedish chef from the Muppets.
Yep, from the Muppets. That's my man, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's how I feel like I'm talking like that sometimes when I get going. But we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some college football. I want to talk about Zach Greinke, and we need to appreciate what that guy's doing. And, oh, yeah, Tuttle, how about some unwritten rules? Tuttle's got a great is it a metaphor or is it an analogy?
I think it's an analogy.
Yeah, more of an analogy, but he's got a good one. So, Tuttle, all that's on tap. We're ready to go. Of course, we have What'll Tuttle Say, maybe a Blums blast, depending on how it goes. But how are you doing first and foremost, my friend?
Blummer, thanks for leading us in, man. You're a good talking head. I know you do this every night on television, and you're getting good at it. So thanks for bringing me in. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. And we do have a little bit of a heat wave. I know you're still connected to SoCal. A heat wave here, very similar to strong weather. I mean, we always have the fire season here, which is a little concerning. But a heat wave here, like Houstonians would be like, heat wave, like, give me a break. But what's happening, speaking of CrossFit, I went to CrossFit this morning at 5:30, and 5 minutes in, you're just drenched. It's the humidity, right? They always say it's not the heat that kills you, it's the humidity. I mean, it's like 90 to 95% humidity in Southern California. That's unbearable. There's a guy in my class, and English is his second language. Nice guy, Rico. He grew up in El Salvador. And I'm like, dude, Rico. I mean, I played winter ball in Puerto Rico, speaking of Rico. And I said, where did you grow up? And he said, El Salvador. And I said, what about this weather? I said, did you bring the weather with you? And he's like, this weather's terrible. Like, El Salvador has better weather than this. He goes, it's not that humid there. It's more tropical. And I'm like, well, I mean, we have worse weather than El Salvador. That's the news flash here. So, it's there you go. I mean, I think right now it feels like Houston without the bugs. So, I mean, we don't have big bugs. We don't have skeeters. We don't have gnats. We don't have certain things. But, man, it's been pretty unbearably hot. And I guess the other breaking news is school started yesterday for the kids, and they're starting out
today for us.
Yeah. So, excellent kind of time the summer's over finally. I mean, like, the kids actually have something to do.
Spring break finally ended.
Yeah, after 7 months. So I don't know if there's a sense of normalcy. The only constant in life is change, but health, and we're all healthy and happy as we talked about off air, as you guys are. But I mean, the weather's, we always talk about the weather. I guess the weather is what it is, but we're running AC a little more than we normally would, and maybe our tax rate's going to go up. We had rolling blackouts and all that stuff. So
unreal, by the way.
Yeah. So it's been crazy, but otherwise we're doing well. So how about you, Blum? Are you doing well?
Yeah, we're doing good. Things are a little bit busy. That's probably why I'm so unprepared, is because school's starting. Volleyball tryouts have been going, and then baseball's been going. And I know that you've actually been watching a lot of baseball. We've been texting throughout some of these games with some of the things that have been going on.
I got a couple of the Who's the Astros correct right away. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, you did.
I played with that guy. I know who that guy is. So anyway, sorry.
Name that Astro presented by Nissan.
That's right.
Got that one nailed down. But it's been fun. I actually got to go out and play some golf today with my buddy Scott House. I'm actually going to plug his website on this podcast. It's swingsolutions.co. And I'm going to actually pipe in a little bit of a video if our good buddy Kevin Perkins can cut that video up and make it look pretty, because I actually got him on the course working with him, and it was a lot of fun. I hit some really bad shots, and then I hit some really good shots. So it's just a matter of finding that consistency in between. Yeah. But watching Astros baseball has actually been a lot of fun recently. They haven't been pretty games. They've been winning some tight ball games, and right now they currently have the best winning streak in all of baseball. They've won 6 straight, and they've actually battled back to get a little bit closer to the Oakland A's, who finally lost a couple of games. Now they're 2.5 back, but the A's have been absolutely in fuego. And interesting that I think they've actually been playing a little bit better without that Laureano guy. Whatever. But that being said, it's been fun to watch them. The tight ball games have been interesting and kept us engaged. But the one constant throughout this is that the starting pitching at this point actually has some better numbers than last season's starting pitching, which is crazy to think about. But the one guy I want to highlight is Zach Greinke. This dude is 4th in the American League with his ERA, and he only has 1 win, which tells you that he's getting no run support. And I think it actually went down. It was at 2.9 runs per game yesterday during his game, and then he got no runs. So it's going to go down from that. But he's been pitching his tail off, and it's been fun because he's not that guy that goes out there and just blows the doors off people. He'll go out there. He invented a changeup in his last start, like a legitimate changeup at like 78, 77 miles an hour. And then he's got 6 other pitches that he's working with. But he has been dealing, and it has been fun to watch. And I know you as a pitcher, Tuttle, you've been watching some of these games too, and I know you appreciate what Greinke's been able to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, gosh, I wish I could have invented some more pitches that might have kept me around longer, you know.
We should all be able to do that.
That's right. You mentioned my 8 or 9 years. I think it was 10 total, of professional baseball. And it's like, why couldn't I invent more pitches and figure out how to take a little off here and add a little there?
A little this, a little
That's
pressure
right.
here.
And it is fun now sitting on the couch watching, because what Greinke's doing is magical. I mean, I think Greg Maddux
That's actually
said
a good word for it.
Yeah, good. I appreciate that. Greg Maddux used to talk about this all the time, and he didn't give up a lot of his secrets while he was playing. And you had the good fortune of most likely having him as a teammate and not having to face him as much. But, he talked about, doing less in bigger situations. And I think this was towards the end of his career. But, he wasn't going to share that information. I was throwing 89 to 91 to 92 with a good sinker, and I could sink it. And my mentality was always to add more. And what happens when you add more, if you're throwing, a decent fastball, a major league average fastball, what happens when you add more to it is it typically flattens out and straightens out, and you get off the planes and all that stuff. So you're not on 2 planes, you're on 1 plane. Well, guess what a hitter likes, man? Guess what they see all day long on BP? It's a 1 plane pitch. So I think Greinke's doing a really nice job of not just keeping the hitters off balance, but, he's changing those speeds, keeping the movement on the ball, and challenging guys when he needs to challenge them. I think sometimes you can also have a reputation of being a nibbler, or a guy who's going to, hey, I'm never going to throw a 2-0 fastball. I'm going to throw the changeup. Hey, here comes that 2-0 fastball right down the middle, and you see it freezes hitters up. So, I mean, magical may be the word, but he's certainly doing a great job. And I wanted to kind of piggyback on what you said of watching the A's, because I am on the left coast here, and I do like the A's. I like the Giants. Those are my teams, and they had a big battle right after the Astros left town.
Oh, yeah. God,
they played
from behind.
Well, again,
Giants.
Gabe Kapler, Gabe Kapler. Gabe was a minor league teammate of mine. We don't have a lot in common. We know some people in common. And I didn't love him as the hire for the Giants. I mean, he may disagree with that. But he has done a really good job, actually, of being the mouthpiece and taking responsibility for what's happening. And I think that alleviates some of the pressure on the players. But, man, 6-2, and he brought in Gott. And I don't know if you've seen Gott throw for the dude. He is nasty. And guess what? He cannot get anybody out right now. He's given up 8 home runs in less than 3 innings. He gave
Oh,
up
man.
3 to the A's, then he gave up 2 or 3 the next night, gave up 3, they left him in, and then he gave up 2 to the Diamondbacks the night after. And, Gabe keeps saying, well, we don't have a closer. He's our late inning guy. Dude, he's throwing 90 kind of from a weird arm slot. He's throwing 94 to 97, and he's got a breaking ball that's more than 2 planes. It's kind of like a slurve. It's a really hard curve at like 82 to 84. Dude, the A's, who were ice cold, we talked about it when the Astros.
Their offense hasn't been good.
No, it's unbelievable how the A's were like, this Olsen kid can really hit. He's hitting 111 with like 7 home runs. Now he's hitting like 270 with 12 home runs. It's like, whoa, what happened? Like, he started hitting. And I think you mentioned Laureano going out. I don't know what it was. It might have been the next man up mentality. So aside from the A's bats, that lineup, Chapman and Olsen and even Kana, Kana's in there. Some power. They just kind of have always this group of no-name dudes, and they raked. So anyway, we can talk about the mentality. We can talk about the heat. We can talk about Greinke some more. But I think that's that combination of just this is like in this 60-game season, anything can happen. And Gott's coming in there with god-awful stuff. He is just lights out, and he gave up 7 home runs in less than 3 innings, 3 outings. I was like, what is happening? And that's when a lot of this game is between the ears, and that'll circle all the way back to Greinke and say, dude, whatever it is between his ears, he's got it. And, he's challenging guys with lesser stuff and sometimes greater stuff and getting guys out. And it's really, it is really impressive. And I think hopefully it's a good example to the young Astros pitchers like BLEACHER. BLEACHER's looking really good too.
Yeah, BLEACHER is looking good, and those are guys that are kind of pitch to contact. They're not looking to overwhelm you or get the swing and miss. They rely a little more on the mentality, like Tuttle is talking about. But it's a psychological warfare when you're facing a guy like Greinke, because you're going, he should throw this pitch now, but he won't throw that pitch. But maybe he will throw that pitch. But if he doesn't throw that pitch, then what? Yeah. And that's where he gets you. Is as soon as he gets you past that second thought, he's in your head, and then he can throw whatever he wants. Because he throws he has a changeup that he throws as hard as he can, and it's at 86 and it dips. And then his fastball comes in at 88 and it stays straight. So you're sitting there guessing. You're trying to figure out 2 planes like Tuttle's talking about. And by the time you figure it out, it's by you, and you're beat by 88. And it drives you bonkers when you're doing it. And I love the fact that he changes speeds on all of his pitches. He goes in, out, up, down, and the speed changes are unbelievable. But you brought up a good point about Greg Maddux talking about, pitching, slowing down the situation if it's a big
less.
situation.
Yeah.
Doing less in a big situation. I had a conversation when I played with San Diego with Jesse Barfield, who played with the Yankees and Blue Jays. I played with his son, Josh Barfield, with San Diego, and we were walking out.
Yep.
And it happened to be a game where I got a hit late in the game to put us ahead, and it was on and off speed pitch. And, we're talking about the at-bat, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, just sometimes, I get the feeling that I need to sit soft sometimes. And what I mean by soft is a secondary pitch, not a fastball.
Right, breaking ball, change up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting there, and I'm talking to him, and he goes, that was one of my biggest things that I had to remind myself when I played. And I said, what was that? And he goes, louder the crowd, slower the pitch. And it kind of goes to what Tuttle is saying, in a big situation, do less, because the hitter's trying to do so much. So the hitter's the one that has to adjust. But it takes a pitcher who's a little more advanced in the thinking to say that to himself and believe in it and execute it. That's why I think that was a good thing that you just said.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Trevor Hoffman's probably a really good example of that, where
great call.
You knew that a changeup was coming after a while. And, when he first started throwing, he could be 95, 96, like he could air it out. But man, I just wish I had, the go back machine to say, you know what, I'm going to throw this guy like 5 straight changeups. They're all going to kind of die. And,
right. That just goes against common thinking.
It goes against common thinking. And then that fastball looks faster. And even if they know it's coming, it's really hard to take a knee high changeup and do something with it. Now,
to stay
if you're
back
sitting
long enough to do something with it. Yeah.
Right. If you know it's coming as a hitter, you might be thinking, all right, let's stay to right center, keep my hands back, all that. But I'm just saying it's even hard. They say it's hard to know when you know it's coming to hit, but it's a lot easier to hit a fastball when you know it's coming. Even when you know a changeup's coming, you don't really want to hit a changeup because you've got to provide the power. You have to do something. And so now sitting on the, on the sideline, it's really easy to be like, man, it'd be fun to just throw like 8 straight changeups and then throw a fastball and kind of see what the hitters would do.
Look
But
like
I think
102.
that's right. But I think you touch on a really good point back to Greinke, and he's setting a good example. It's funny to look at BLAC. I've been watching a lot of Astros baseball, and he's had really 3 consecutive starts that are really nice. And, to call him like a pitch to contact pitcher at 92 to 95 is like,
that's a whole new world we live in now, man. It's crazy.
It is, because he looks more like not a power pitcher. He's mixing his pitches really well, but what he does that I see is he's pitching with confidence, and that makes a big difference. And we already brought up Gott, the closer for the Giants. Man, 3 walk-offs 3 nights in a row, and that guy's got lights out stuff. So again, back to between the ears. So hopefully Greinke's setting a good example for these guys, and Machado's learning as well what Greinke's doing that's helping get these guys out. And you and I won't out you as much, but I will send you texts during the games. And very often I'm making fun of Machado, either, boxing a pitch. Maldonado, sorry, yeah. Machado. I want to call him Machado because machete. That's what I hear. But yeah.
I love saying machete.
There you go. So Maldonado, I make fun of only because as a former pitcher, man, he's back there, he throws guys out, but he's not moving well. He's boxing some pitches. He's not helping the pitcher. But I will say live on our podcast, he has done a much better job of that. And maybe part of that is because he doesn't have the Verlanders and the Coles out there. He's got the BLACs and, these other guys that are coming and going, and he has to be more mature, and he has to work a little bit harder. And I definitely see, especially now that they've turned around the wins and losses, you can see it having a positive effect on the Astros.
No, Maldonado's done a good job. You're right. He's not typically one of those guys that will go out there and frame things up and have good analytics in that sense. But I think what to what you're talking about is, the Verlanders and Coles are going to overwhelm guys and get swings and misses. But the guys who are on the edges, you need to be a little more adamant about really making the pitch look good or receiving it well enough to make the guy behind you actually think it's a strike. Other Astros news that is going on, because Greinke is great and will continue to be great, and I think he is rubbing off and being an ace of the staff on some of these younger guys, is Yordan Alvarez. Now, this podcast will come out on Friday. It is currently Wednesday, and there was a radio show this morning here in town in Houston. We knew that Yordan Alvarez was hurt. He went on the injured list, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dusty Baker comes on to a radio show and basically says he's not sure that Yordan's going to be back the rest of the year. And for those of us who are following the Astros, that came as a little bit of a shock. We knew that the knees were bad, but we had no idea they were this bad. We heard that he would be back after a quick stint on the injured list and be back in that lineup, providing the power that we need. And now all of a sudden, all those hopes are dashed. And I'm not sure what's going on, but that is a big blow to this lineup, because Michael Brantley's still on the injured list. George Springer is nursing a bad wrist. The Astros are winning games by tight margins. They need a lot of offense to go with this pitching. But, man, this is a huge blow. But the thing that kind of shocks me more than anything is the fact that Dusty Baker has come out in the morning show before a weekend, before a series in Colorado, and says, yep, Yordan's gone. May never see him again. And I was so taken aback by that. I'm shocked right now. Shocked.
I didn't realize that, and you look shocked. I will say you're going to be a lot less tingly without Yordan Alvarez in
the tingle is gone.
Yeah, in the lineup. But these things do happen. We did touch on some of this earlier in the year before the season started. We talked about what a 60-game season would mean without the live action to prepare and get ready. And right now we haven't seen Verlander, and as you said, Springer's dinged up.
He threw some flat ground. That's good news.
There you go. So there's a ray of sunshine. Nice job, Blummer. Some optimism here. But again,
minor tingle.
There you go, a minor tingle. So Verlander has not thrown. Springer is, like you said, nursing a wrist. You got Brantley on the IL. You got Alvarez definitely going on the IL, but maybe out for the season. And some of these are just, the pitching staff, like you said, you've got out of those guys, the only guy I recognize coming out of the bullpen is Presley, right? Yeah. So you have Greinke and Presley are like two of the guys I recognize. Who's the other guy on the IL from the bullpen that was?
There's Peacock, Presley, Osuna.
Peacock and Osuna are the two guys I was
those
thinking
were the two guys closing things out. They were lights out.
I'm just looking at all those guys, and you're saying, look, the spring training, starting spring training, stopping spring training, starting spring training again is just, not working out for the Astros right now, and it's not putting them in the driver's seat to make things happen. I guess the optimism is the A's were really hot and they finally lost a game. The Astros are in second place, so they're kind of still hanging around.
In the playoffs, the 2020 playoffs.
Right, they're in the playoffs, and if they get in and they get some of those guys back, then that's what we talked about. The sprint will be advantageous to the teams with the more experience and the better players. But the Astros got to get there, and it's not going to be good limping in. And if you limp all the way in and Jordan's not in the lineup, then you're still probably at a disadvantage. So it hasn't, this little 60-game sprint hasn't worked out yet for the Astros, and maybe there's good things to come, maybe not.
Yeah, I can only hope that by the end of these 60 games, there's about 40 left, a little under 40. I think 37, 38 games left, which is amazing to talk about. I mean, that's basically a month left of baseball, but you hope
at the end of the next 2 weeks, you're going to be halfway through the season. I mean, what?
Is that not incredible to think about? TK said that the other day, and I'm looking at him going, what? Man, we just started, dude. What are you talking about? Yeah. But this is just so bizarre to be able to do these games. But speaking of bizarreness.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me just jump in. In weird times, right, we have weird things happen. And 2020, we know, is the year that we're going to write off for everything. But I will say another fantastic article about the unwritten rules of baseball came out. It was in The
Athletic. Is where I was going. Beautiful.
Yeah, I knew you were. But I thought it would be nicer if I let it in. So thank you for letting me hog the microphone. So anyway, it is a bizarre time, but the unwritten rules of baseball. If you get on The Athletic, read the article. I don't remember the author, as Jeff and I do prepare, but we typically don't prepare to the nth degree with like writing down authors and all that. But the tone of the article was okay, but it just said another example of these unwritten rules that we don't know anything about. And the example they were starting
folks
with.
Folks at home, sit back and listen to Tuttle right now, because you got to enjoy what he's about to bring. This is good.
I hope they do. I bet we're going to get some pushback.
This is good.
Anyway, so basically, the author went on to say that Fernando Tatis Jr., who it was a 7-1 ball game in the eighth inning, bases loaded, and he swung at a 3-0 pitch and hit a grand slam and made the game 11-1. And the next hitter got one zinged behind his ear. I believe that was Machado. Speaking of Machado, how about that? I get to say it, and it's correct.
You got a Freudian slip earlier.
Yeah, there you go. And Jace Tingler said, yep, I guess this young guy's got to learn, So Tatis's own manager said, yep, got to learn those unwritten rules of baseball. And what are you pointing at?
No, I scratched my neck.
Oh, okay. I thought
I got some neck funk. I haven't showered after I got done golfing, and I probably like part of the bunker back there. I don't know.
All right. Anyway, so Jace Tingler said, hey, this young guy's got to learn about baseball. And the author then proceeded to take the angle of, you know what? None of us know anything about these goddamn unwritten rules of baseball. It doesn't really make sense. They're stupid. Granted, he said, I didn't make my high school baseball team, but these unwritten rules are not warranted, and they're not valid, and they're not really anything that the regular, I guess, fan understands. So the GP, the general population that's a fan of the games. And I said, well, let me provide some clarity, right? So you and I talked about this out there. How can
somebody who's never played or got cut from their high school team say that?
Exactly.
That's the part that drives me nuts.
Right.
Until you stood in there and had a dude hit a grand slam on a 3-0 count down by 7, how can you say that?
I totally agree with you. And right. So to the outside person that's in a vacuum, it looks like it's silly, right? These guys are just playing baseball. Some of the other unwritten rules, I have a story about that, but let me get to the analogy. The analogy I came up with right away was from A Few Good Men, right? Tom Cruise has got Noah Wiley on the stand. Sorry, I don't know the characters' names. And, he pulls out the manual, right? The Marine manual for Gitmo for Guantanamo Bay. And he says, hey, show me where it says, code red in here. And he's like, well, it's not in there. And Kevin Bacon, walks away, and Tom Cruise grabs it and says, can you show me how to get to the mess hall in the manual? And he's like, well, it's not in there. And he said, you mean to tell me the whole time you've been down here for years, you've never eaten a meal in the mess hall? And he goes, no. And he goes, well, then how do you get there if it's not in the manual, if it's not written down, if it's not a rule? And he said, I just follow the crowd at chow time, right? I mean, that's the line. He knows how to get there, and he knows he has to eat, and he just follows everybody over to the mess hall. That is a perfect analogy for the unwritten rules of baseball. If you're in the clubhouse and you hang out with this family, this group of guys that all are rowing the boat in the same direction, then there are rules that you have to follow, just like in your house, just like in your clubhouse, just like on your team, anywhere else in society, just like your place of employment. There are rules that you have to follow that are not always written down. And that holds true with baseball. The other thing it made me think of, full circle, and because we have provided some positivity in this podcast based on what goes on in the clubhouse, is we talked about with the racial issues before. It's like, dude, you're in a clubhouse. You don't really see color in the clubhouse. I mean, it doesn't really matter if they're from Puerto Rico or the Dominican or from New York City or from Florida or Texas, or it just doesn't matter. You're in the clubhouse. You guys are all, essentially all the same, as long as you're, have this common goal. And that, again, applies to what we're saying. These unwritten rules are still rules, and they're still valid rules of baseball. And I think until you've walked a mile in another man's shoes, I think it's really, I don't know if it's disingenuous, but it's not really respectful to say, hey, those rules that have been around since the beginning of time, those unwritten rules of baseball, they're bullshit and they don't mean anything. They mean a lot to us. And I'm going to finish up with one story, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So I remember being in spring training with the Reds, and I got called over to the big league side at one point, and Nolan Ryan was still playing, believe it or not. Or he had just finished. I can't remember. But the story was, this guy's sitting on the bench, and Nolan Ryan's throwing a couple innings in spring training, and he gets the ball back from the catcher, and he walks all the way down to home plate. And I'm sure you've heard stories like this before. And there's like, the salty veteran, hitting coach sitting there. And then there's this young whippersnapper like, hey, I got a bat. I'm ready to hit. And Nolan Ryan walks all the way down to home plate, and he smooths out the dirt right along the foul line, right there on the cutout of home plate. And he smooths it out. But the whole time he's looking in the dugout. He's looking in the visiting dugout, and he smooths out the dirt, and he walks over to the other line, third base line, and he smooths out the dirt. And the young guy's like, hey, Hick, like, what are we doing here? Like, what's he doing, man? And he goes, Nolan, he's just reminding us we don't bunt on him. And that was it. Like, that's it. Well, yeah, you can bunt, and bunting's part of baseball. And here's the guy who throws 7 no-hitters. You're taking your life in your hands if you square around and drop down a bunt on a 42-year-old dude in spring training. And he knew it, and the veteran hitters all knew it too. And that's an unwritten rule of baseball. And if you want to bunt on him, as a 42-year-old or 43-year-old guy in the big leagues at spring training, more power to you. Go for it. So I think, again, just a couple of those examples, the Few Good Men example and that Nolan Ryan story. I mean, there are unwritten rules of baseball that you should follow if you want to keep your health, earn the respect of your teammates, and be a successful baseball player at the highest level.
You said the most important word in there. Now, everybody's saying unwritten rules. Why are there unwritten rules? Because it's out of respect for the other team. And I know you're trying to bury them, but you don't need to kick them in the nuts while they're on the ground after getting knocked out. That's the only thing. That's where the unwritten rules kind of come in. It's just out of respect for the game and respect for the other team that is struggling, that you're just absolutely putting an ass whooping on. 3-0 down, up by 7 runs. It's on the borderline. We saw the Oakland A's come back from a 6-run deficit in San Francisco. So the comebacks are possible, especially in this day and age of lift and separate where everybody's hitting home runs. How about being on the other side and saying you shouldn't have given up the 7 runs? How about you shouldn't have gotten to that 3-0 count and been in a situation where you're being forced to throw a pitch I know you're going to throw for a strike? It wasn't a good pitch, by the way. It was a pretty nasty pitch away, and he hammered it the other way for a home run.
Yes, he did.
But those are, that's the other side is like, well, I'm not the one that's, we're whooping your ass. We're not getting whooped up on, so we're going to swing it. But the 3-0 thing is more of a sign of respect, because the theory is the pitcher is going to throw the same pitch 3-1 that he threw 3-0. So why are you swinging 3-0? You could wait one more pitch, hit the home run, and guess what? You could run around the bases with both flaps up with the bird in the air and say, I hit a bomb and we're up 11-0 now, and rub it in their face, and nobody would say anything. There's so many pieces of this onion to peel back, because This is the same Texas Rangers team with Mike Minor on the mound, who was going for his 200th strikeout, had a guy pop up with 2 strikes, and they dropped it in foul territory in order to have him have the opportunity to go strike out number 200. So there's a lot going on. And if that's not an unwritten rule, this is not an unwritten rule. You just go out there and start hammering guys. But Fernando Tatis Jr. is the son of a former major leaguer. I'm not sure if there was any teaching along the way in that sense. He's obviously got the talent to play in the show, and he's a phenomenal talent. But at the same time, we had a situation with Houston. The first year Yuli Gurriel came over from Cuba, I believe we were in, I want to say it's either Baltimore or Seattle. And the Astros were up 6 or 7 runs in a similar situation. Bases weren't loaded, but it was a 3-0 count, and Yuli lets it eat, man. He's like, fastball up, fouls it back. The opposing manager and team all of a sudden went whoop, and got on the top deck, and they were like this. But before that they could get anything out of their mouth, A.J. Hinch got to the top step and kind of started putting his hands on his chest like, no, it's okay, it's on me. Because Yuli's been playing in Cuba. When they play in Cuba, they're out there for blood. Yeah. They are out there crushing people. You get down 3-0, I'm not looking at the scoreboard. I'm looking at the count I'm in right here, and I'm getting a pitch to hit. So that's part of the mentality too, is that a lot of these hitters will take the scoreboard out of it and go swing it just to get their numbers. And, hey, man, it's 2020. You don't know what you're going to get.
No. Hey, and two things to that. So, again, there's the higher overarching unwritten rules of baseball, which I do appreciate. You're peeling back the onion specifically on Tatis Jr., the Mike Minor fact, all these other little – every situation.
There's a lot going on. They all
there's
have
a lot
different
going on.
Context. Yeah.
Right. But I think you really touched on a good point, which is the subtle difference between 3-0 and 3-1. And that's a really good point, which is, look, you're going to get the same pitch. That's the idea. Maybe this guy can find the zone. He hasn't found the zone yet. And so, yeah, if he hammers a 3-1 pitch out, then this whole conversation goes away in respect to that
crazy.
or regard
One
to that.
Pitch.
Yeah, it is crazy, but it makes sense to you and it makes sense to me. It does. Like, why come out of your shoes?
Because you played.
That's right. And that was my overarching point about this guy writing saying, hey, I never played. But it's like, hey, the I never played takes you out of the voting category for whether this is the right thing or the wrong thing to do. And then the other piece he put in the article, which I actually like too, was Joe Morgan and Jim Palmer, who both finished their last year at the same time, like 1984, I think, in the big leagues. And in 1990 or 91, they were both nominated to the Hall of Fame. So they went in together. Jim Palmer was at the end of his career. He was also aging 39, 40, 41, 42 in 1984. He came in a game out of the bullpen. It was like 8-1. The Reds were winning. Big Red Machine. Joe Morgan stepped up to the plate. He was in his last year and 3-0 pitch. And he came unglued. He swung and missed or fouled it back and fell down. And then something happened. He rolled over or something happened and the game ended. And at the end of the game, they asked him about it. And he said, oh, my God, I'm so sorry for doing that. I don't know what came over me. But the next day he hunted down Jim Palmer in the clubhouse and said, dude, I am so sorry for doing that. Like, he knew what the rule was. Again, the unwritten rules. And he doesn't know what, caused him to do that, if he blacked out or, he was just trying to get one last hit. But he actually went to, didn't have cell phones back in 1984, not as readily available as we do now. And he basically went, found him the next day and just completely apologized for swinging 3-0. And I know it doesn't make sense to certain people, but like I said, I think the value here is we played the game, and just because it's an unwritten rule doesn't mean it's not a rule. And I'm happy to support that till the day I die.
I like it. No, I mean, there's unwritten rules, and until you've actually stepped in that box or had a guy, you can sit there and say, oh, man, that's a bunch of BS, the unwritten rule. He shouldn't, let him hit, let him drive it out of there. I don't know how to get people who haven't stood on the other side of that situation and help them understand how just brutal it feels like when the guy just opens up on a 3-0 pitch that he knows is coming and hammers it out of the ballpark. And you're just sitting there, all of a sudden you don't have any more shoulders. You're just Everything comes out of you, man, and you're just beat like a dead dog. And all it does is create an anger issue, more or less.
And I do think at the professional level, it's different. I mean, we talk about professional courtesy. I mean, it really is a professional thing. And in all honesty, as a pitcher, I'm frustrated. I'm down 3-0. It's 10-1. Maybe I gave up the 5 runs before it, but most likely at the big league level, it's a clean slate for me. But the game is kind of, they're putting me in a 10-1 game for a reason. Like, you know, like Cy Snead the other day, right? Like we're going to get him in there and get him some work. And if he can put up a 0, maybe his confidence goes. Great. Let's do it. Get him in there, get his confidence. I'm 3-0. Now, if he comes out of his shoes on 3-0, I'm not happy in a 10-1 game. If it's 3-1 and I groove one and he crushes it, I'm like, dude, I shouldn't have been down 3-1, right? Like I need to get ahead of these guys. So it really, you know, we could just keep going around and around with that. But I just feel like that would be on me. The 3-0 thing is a professional courtesy. I mean, you're not going to try and disrespect the guy. And the other thing I wanted to say about that was the women's soccer team when they beat, was it the Philippines or something? Or they beat them like 15-0 or 14-0. But guess what they did? They subbed out all the starters, right? So it's 7-8-0. They subbed everybody out. They put in their B team, and then they put in their C team. Again, that's out of respect for the team, the other team. But they're not going to like stop playing soccer. Like that's more disrespectful than putting in the C team or the D team and not playing at all.
No, it's tough. I mean, and there's instances in football too. You know, there's unwritten rules in football where you just don't start throwing bombs on the first down to score touchdowns and pad your stats. But it's in every sport where there's a certain level of respect. You got anything else you want to hit on, or do you just want to hustle into what'll Tuttle say? What are you feeling like, man? Because this is on you.
I do have a what'll Tuttle say topic, but I feel like this whole podcast has been at least me just getting all fired up and what'll Tuttle say and everything.
Man. That's why it's good. All right, so let's go, man. What'll Tuttle say?
All right, I think it's a simple one. What'll Tuttle say today is I keep seeing this commercial that Dwayne Wade narrates, and it says that he's also part of the ownership group or the founder for Budweiser 0.0 alcohol beer. Yes.
What is the point?
I don't get the point. Thank you. Like, what is the point for non-alcoholic beer? Now, I will give the Astros podcast or the Astros baseball podcast that Rob Fontenot does a little credit, because he had me on a couple weeks ago doing fair or foul. So it was the one-word answer, is this fair or foul? And non-alcoholic beer. And I shrugged my shoulders. I'm like, if I said that was fair, you would kick me off this podcast. I mean, that's foul. That's foul by a mile. But what's the point? So seltzer I can get behind, right? We've always had wine coolers. We've always had the light alcohol, like, hey, you know, maybe more with a sexist comment, you know, it's more of a girly drink. That's fine. Like a cocktail with an umbrella coming out of it.
Judge me.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not judging. But non-alcoholic beer, like, you know, it took me 5-10 years to get used to the taste of black coffee. Now, we've talked about coffee. I love coffee. I mean, I can taste now like a wine connoisseur, like a sommelier. Oh, yes, those beans were grown in Costa Rica. That's a medium roast. There's a note of pepper. Yeah, there's a note of, like strawberry in there. I got it, yeah. Or lemon zest. You know, I get it. But non-alcoholic beer, I mean, you know, I like IPAs.
Who drinks beer for the taste?
Seriously. So
I mean,
what
you drink
is the point?
I drink St. Arnold's because I like the taste, but I also like the buzz.
I do too. I look at me on this podcast. I'm highly caffeinated. I get agitated easy. Like, I'm like ready to go. I need something to take the edge off. A non-alcoholic beer is not taking the edge off. It's actually making me more edgy. So anyway, what is the point of non-alcoholic beer? We haven't gotten to the mailbag in a long time, but I would love to have people tweet at Real David Tuttle or send in some mailbag responses to what is the point of non-alcoholic beer. I haven't figured it out. Now, if you're going for the recovering alcoholic group that really just misses the taste of beer, great. But what margin of business, like market share, are you going for there? I'm totally confused.
Who are you getting this for? Are you getting it for the guy who's off the wagon but loves the taste, and you're just teasing him with it and saying, hey, man, doesn't this taste like a beer? Wouldn't you love to have the buzz? Go for the real thing. I mean, this is terrible. There is no idea. What are you going to do? Are you going to give it to your 12-year-old and be like, I need to train you in drinking beer, but right now you can't have the alcohol version of it, so we're going to give you the non-alcoholic version of it. Everybody gets one.
That's great.
Hell?
Hey, is there you got a high school party? You know, the parents are supervising. All your daughters have everyone over. You got a pool party.
Near beer.
There going to be alcohol at the party? No alcohol. You just got 30 packs of Budweiser Zero. Like, you know, we're just getting them ready for the real thing. Like, you know, everybody
There's going to be one 18-year-old in the corner drinking 30 of them, trying to get a buzz out of it.
With a big X on his hand, right? Like we used to have the club, the 21 and under club.
Yeah,
like when you're 18 to 21, you get the X. Like, all right. So at your house, and the Shays Lounge over there has the Budweiser Zero, and you got big X's.
Sharpie. Yeah.
You know, so again, it is laughable. I'd love to hear some responses, but I agree with you. You're either training folks to drink before they're ready, or you're teasing people that are recovering alcoholics.
Yeah.
And then, or there is that hugely small population that's probably loves the taste,
so
right?
Good.
Ooh, the taste of beer is so good. Yeah, I don't know. So
you know what they're making that for?
Yeah.
They're making it for all the people who buy electric bikes now.
Ah, there you go.
So you can drink and ride.
There we go. We've tied it together without a helmet. So you can drink and ride without a helmet. And the officer pulls you over and says, man, you ran that red light. You're on an electric bike. You're like, non-alcoholic beer.
Non-alcoholic.
Doesn't matter. Here's your citation. No helmet, and you're not following the laws of the road. So anyway, I keep seeing the ad, and maybe it's your fault as well. But anytime you watch, maybe you watch MLB.TV, right, the app. If you're watching on the app, it circulates like 3 commercials. All the MLB sponsors are on there. So you have Budweiser, you have Roman, and one other. And so every time there's a commercial break, you get one of those. So I'm like, if I hear Dwayne Wade again talk about how great this 0.0 alcohol beer is, I'm going to turn the TV off.
Yeah, I'm out. Can't do it.
Come on.
All right.
I actually should have got a non-alcoholic beer for this podcast. That's what I should be drinking. Then I don't have to be. No, I'm kidding.
No, and then throw you out, man. That's not good. Don't ever. That's not good. Don't ever do that. Please don't. Don't put me in such a tough spot.
Did any of that shake anything loose in your head to give us a blast here for Blum's class, or what?
Well, you know what? It's actually, we do at the end of our podcast, we really try and do a good job of thanking the essential workers, thanking the first responders, frontliners, everybody. And the more I sat here and the more I thought about it, I keep hearing out of the corner of my ear, because I left my office door open and my girls are probably mad at me for screaming in the background on this podcast, is teachers. This whole Zoom thing is unbelievable to me. And watching my kids, teachers who are doing it on Zoom, know this: the kids miss you. The kids miss seeing you in person. They miss having access to you. You're doing the best you can. I can appreciate it. I actually have 2 Blums blast because this has to do with teachers. So the teachers, you're doing a hell of a job. Welcome back to school. I know you're doing the best you can. Hopefully we figure this thing out and we can get kids in class safely and appropriately so that you can do the work you need to do, because these kids are desperate to see you. At least mine are. My kids absolutely 100% want to get in school and be with the teachers. That's how much you mean to them. So that being said, I mentioned that I played golf earlier and my swing coach is out there. I didn't realize how awful my golf swing was until I had a professional teach me how to swing. And now I'm trying to swing a golf swing and I suck. But the good thing is that every once in a while I hit a good shot. But if you want to get your swing right, and I'm going to pump my boy Scott House right now at Westwood Country Club, because if you go to swingsolutions.co, and hopefully you're going to see a short video clip here real quick of him working me on the course. The beauty of it is you can have this in your pocket on your phone, and he will go through some of the swing solutions that he has, like he does with me in the clip you're about to see. So what are we sitting? Tree in the way.
Yep, tree in the way. You got to go up.
Talk me through this thing.
Yep, got to go up. Right there where his cart is.
Yep.
So over the trees.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ball forward.
So I've got a pitching wedge.
Pitching wedge. We're going to go ball forward. Go right elbow in. I need a square face and a finish.
Elbow good?
Elbow in, yep, right there. Good shot.
Yeah, we'll take it. I've got my swing coach. Come on in. I've got my swing coach on the course. If you want to have this guy, Scott House, with you on the course, where do they got to go, Scotty?
Swingsolutions.co.
Get him on the course with you. He'll make you better.
Let's go.
So that is Scott House working with me and me grinding out there in 150-degree heat here in Houston, Texas. But kudos to the teachers. Kudos to my swing coach who was trying to grind it out, trying to make me look good. And that's going to do it for Blum's Blast. I know it wasn't anything fancy. I was totally ill prepared, but I'm just encouraged by what's happening, seeing kids go back to school and learning again. So giving the teachers the shout out. Tuttle, what do you got for me to lay this thing out and finish this off?
Yeah, so I as always, I seem to just second what you say for the finale. But yeah, the teachers are doing a phenomenal job. Every time you talk about golf, I'm thinking about how much we're missing, just regular normal life. And I said last time that like going to the beach, like going surfing or swimming, and then going out on the golf course is the time it feels the most normal. I am really looking forward to a couple of things that we talked about before COVID. One is coming out to Houston to do a live podcast, maybe over at
St. Arnold's.
St. Arnold's on the beer garden.
Yes.
And then golfing. I mean, you've kind of gotten me in the bug of golf. I golfed twice over my little vacation. I've had no lessons in like 5 years or 10 years, but man, I'd love to go out and see Scott and
because you're
learn
sneaky
a few
good
things.
too. That's why you want to play. You're sneaky good.
Well, I mean, we've been playing a long time. I mean, I hope my eye-hand coordination at least carries me enough to hit that little white ball. Yep. But yeah, I think a few tweaks here or there, which is I think what you're finding, that that maybe there's some promise there and it might make the game enjoyable. But I'm really looking forward to coming out and doing a live podcast in Houston at the Beer Garden and hitting the golf ball around with you. And you guys got me fired up at that PGA thing, like Harding Park. You're missing out all these places that you would normally play too.
Painful.
So shout out to the teachers, first responders, anybody on the front lines. We know that you guys are willing to do things that many of us aren't. And then from a selfish perspective, I can't wait for things to get back to normal to head out to Houston and do some podcasting and golfing. So that's all I got, Blummer. Yep. Another good week. I like the weeks we don't see each other or keep each other in the loop because I feel like there's a little more fire.
No, I get excited to see you, man. It really stirs it up a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome.
But it's been good. I hope everybody enjoys the week and the weekend. That is going to do it here on Bleacher Blums. Remember, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and then, of course, we're on the Social Nostra network. If you actually want to see the video of us and our pretty faces right here, I still have golf head in this podcast that everybody missed out on.
Your hair always looks the same as does mine. If it's short enough, we just got like spiky blonde hair. That's all we got.
It doesn't move. But the one thing we always want to remind everybody is make sure you get after it. Most of all, believe it.